Fog drifts silently between the trees, thick enough to hide the path beneath your feet. The forest feels colder here, quieter, as if every sound has been swallowed. Somewhere ahead, a trail disappears into gray mist, and once you step onto it, the world behind you fades away. Hikers speak of footsteps following them through the fog, of whispers carried on damp air, of shapes moving just beyond sight. They say these forest trails are not just paths through nature, but doorways. Doorways to places where people get lost, time bends, and something unseen walks beside you. Tonight, we enter the foggy forests of California, to uncover the most haunted trails, places where the trees remember every soul that never made it out. Hello, my dear friend. I am very glad you are here with me tonight. Wherever you are listening from, I hope you are warm, comfortable, and safe, because what we are about to explore is not meant to be faced alone. California is often seen as bright and beautiful, but hidden beyond its highways and cities are forests where fog lingers year-round. In these woods, trails twist unnaturally, visibility fades to just a few steps ahead, and silence presses in so deeply it feels alive. People who walk these paths report sudden chills, overwhelming dread, and the feeling of being watched by something patient and ancient. Some return shaken, some return changed, and some are never found at all. Before we step into the mist together, let me ask you this. Fog gathers early along the Lost Whisper Trail, sliding between the trees like a slow tide. The path winds through dense forest where sunlight struggles to reach the ground, and even at midday the air feels dim and hushed. Rangers describe the trail as ordinary on maps, clearly marked and carefully maintained, yet those who walk it often say the same thing. Something feels wrong from the moment the first step is taken. The forest carries sound in unusual ways. Footsteps echo longer than expected, and distant birds seem closer than they should be. Wind moves through the branches with careful patience, as if it is listening. Many hikers report that the fog never lifts completely, even on clear days. It clings to the trail, softening edges and bending distance until landmarks appear farther away or strangely near. The first whispers are almost always dismissed. A hiker pauses, convinced someone has spoken nearby. The voice sounds familiar, shaped like a memory rather than a stranger. It carries the hiker's own name, spoken gently, as if by a friend who does not wish to startle. When no one is found, logic returns, and the walk continues. As the trail deepens, the fog thickens. Signs remain visible, arrows pointing clearly ahead, warnings posted where the path narrows. Still, the whispers return. They seem to drift from just beyond the trees, never directly ahead, never behind. Each time, the voice feels closer, more certain, as though it knows exactly where the listener stands. Those who follow the sound often believe they are making a small detour. Just a few steps off the path, they tell themselves, only long enough to see who is calling. The ground beyond the trail looks safe, covered in moss and fallen leaves. The forest feels welcoming, almost warm. Then the fog closes in. Direction becomes uncertain within minutes. The trail disappears without warning, and the trees rearrange themselves in the haze. Every turn feels correct until it does not. The whispers continue, sometimes encouraging, sometimes urgent, guiding the lost deeper into the forest. The voice never sounds angry. It never raises volume. It simply waits. Search teams know this pattern well. They follow tracks that end abruptly, as if the walker simply stepped into nothing. Compasses behave erratically near the trail, needles wavering without settling. Radios lose signal, and batteries drain faster than expected. Even experienced rescuers report hearing their names when the fog rolls in thick enough. One documented case involved a group of seasoned hikers who entered the trail together and separated only briefly. Two followed a whispered call, convinced another member needed help. They were found days later on the opposite side of the forest, dehydrated and shaken. Neither could explain how they traveled so far. Both insisted they were always just moments from returning to the main path. Not everyone is found. Some vanish without trace, leaving behind packs neatly placed near the trail edge. In a few cases, searchers reported fresh footprints appearing during the search, leading away from areas already checked. The prints often ended near dense fog banks, where visibility dropped to almost nothing. Local stories suggest the trail has always been this way. Long before signs and maps, travelers avoided the area, claiming the forest borrowed voices from those who entered. The whispers were said to learn, growing more convincing with each passing year. Some believe the fog itself listens, storing names like echoes that never fade. Despite warnings, curiosity continues to draw people in. The trail is listed online as challenging but safe, and many assume the stories are exaggerations. They arrive with cameras and confidence, ready to document the mystery. Most leave quickly, unsettled by sounds they cannot explain. A few linger too long. At dusk, the forest changes tone. Light fades into silver haze, and the whispers become easier to hear. They drift across the path like breath on cold air. Rangers close the trail before nightfall whenever possible. But fog moves faster than gates. Once darkness settles, the lost whisper trail seems to wait. Those who walk it safely share one piece of advice. Never answer the voice. Never step off the path, no matter how certain the sound feels. Keep eyes forward, feet steady, and trust the markers, even when they seem wrong. The trail does not chase. It only calls. When the fog finally lifts, the forest looks harmless again. Birds return, and sunlight reaches the ground. The path appears simple, even peaceful. Yet the silence that follows feels deliberate, like a pause between breaths. And for those who listen closely, there is always the sense that something is remembering their name. The road that leads to Redwood Vale Path narrows without warning, as if the forest itself is drawing visitors inward. Asphalt fades into damp gravel, and then into soil darkened by centuries of fallen needles. Towering redwoods rise on both sides, their trunks so wide and tall that the sky becomes an afterthought. Light filters down in thin strands, muted and pale, while fog drifts low and patient, curling around bark and roots like something alive. For generations, this forest corridor has been a place of quiet passage rather than destination. Early loggers avoided it, hikers spoke of it in lowered voices, and rangers marked it on maps without encouragement. There are no signs welcoming travelers, no benches, no viewpoints. Just a path, worn smooth by time, winding deeper into the trees. Those who walk it often say the silence arrives first. Birds grow scarce. Wind softens until even the tallest branches barely move. Footsteps sound distant, as if absorbed by the ground. The forest seems to listen. Those who walk it often say the silence arrives first. Those who walk it often say the silence arrives first. For generations, this forest corridor has been a place of quiet passage rather than destination. There are no signs welcoming travelers, no benches, no viewpoints. Just a path, worn smooth by time, winding deeper into the trees. Fog is the defining presence of Redwood Vale Path. It appears even on clear days, rolling in without explanation, thickening until depth and distance lose meaning. Trees 10 feet away blur into tall shadows. Beyond that, nothing feels certain. Visitors describe the sensation of walking inside a held breath, where each step feels both guided and restrained. Where each step feels both guided and restrained. They do not move. They do not approach. They stand between the trees, partially obscured, shaped like people but lacking detail. No faces, no features, only darker silhouettes against the pale gray air. Witnesses report noticing them only after a moment of stillness, as if the forest allows the sight briefly before withdrawing it. Some believe it is a trick of light and shadow, the mind filling gaps in an unfamiliar environment. Others point out that the sightings are remarkably consistent. The figures are always upright. Always silent. Always watching, though eyes are never seen. Rangers assigned to the surrounding area rarely speak on record, but privately many acknowledge unusual reports. Lost time. Compasses that spin without settling. Radios that fade into static for several seconds, then return as if untouched. Footprints that appear beside the path, matching the stride of the walker, then stop abruptly. One experienced surveyor recalled marking trees along the trail for environmental assessment. After several hours, he realized the markings were repeating, the same carved symbols appearing again and again. He later confirmed that he had been walking in a straight line, yet the forest had guided him in a wide, silent loop. He left the path before dusk. Local history offers fragments rather than explanations. Indigenous stories speak of boundary forests, places where the natural world grows thin. Not dangerous, but watchful. These were not places to linger, but corridors to pass through with respect. The redwoods were considered keepers of memory, standing longer than human history, observing countless lives without interference. Over time, settlers brought their own interpretations. Some believed the figures were remnants of travelers who never left. Others suggested they were reflections, echoes formed by fog and towering trunks. No theory has ever settled the matter. What remains consistent is the emotional weight of the experience. Many who walk Redwood Vale Path describe a subtle shift in awareness. Thoughts grow quieter. Time feels elastic. Minutes stretch, then collapse. The forest does not threaten, yet it does not comfort. It simply exists, immense and indifferent, offering no reassurance that the path will remain familiar. There are moments when the fog parts just enough to reveal impossible distances between trees, as if the forest briefly rearranges itself. At other times, the trail seems to narrow, forcing walkers closer to the massive trunks. Bark textures become vivid. The scent of damp earth grows stronger. Every sense sharpens, except sight. Some visitors report hearing footsteps behind them that stop when they stop. Others hear their own breathing echo faintly, though the air remains still. No voices are heard. No words. Only presence. The figures, when seen, do not pursue. They do not gesture. They stand as markers, as if noting that someone has entered a space not meant for observation. Their stillness is what unsettles most witnesses. In a living forest, motion is expected. Leaves fall. Branches sway. Animals scatter. The figures do none of this. They simply are. Most people leave the path with relief rather than fear. Once the fog thins and daylight opens, the forest returns to something recognizable. Birds reappear. Sound returns. The redwoods remain tall, but no longer oppressive. Looking back, the entrance to the path is often hard to find, blending seamlessly into the surrounding woods. Those who return home speak carefully about the experience. Not because they fear disbelief, but because words feel insufficient. Something about Redwood Vale Path resists explanation. It does not demand belief, only acknowledgement. Today, the path remains unmarked, maintained only by the slow passage of time. It is neither closed nor encouraged. Those who find it usually do so by chance, or by a quiet pull they cannot explain. The forest does not chase them away. It only watches, standing patiently in fog and shadow, as it has for centuries. Waiting for footsteps to pass through its veil once more. Fog pools thickly along the floor of Grey Hollow, settling into the shallow bends of the land as if the forest itself exhales at dusk. The trail curves through low ground where trees grow closer together, their trunks darkened by constant moisture. Light struggles here. Even at midday, the air feels dim, muted, and heavy with quiet. Hikers often describe the first sensation as a shift in sound. The wind thins. Birds fall silent. What remains is the steady rhythm of boots against packed soil, measured and familiar. The trail appears ordinary at first glance, marked and maintained, bordered by ferns and moss. Yet something about the place encourages a slower pace, as though the ground resists forward motion. As walkers move deeper into Grey Hollow, footsteps begin to echo from behind. The sound arrives softly at first, nearly indistinguishable from the noise of movement ahead. Each step lands in perfect timing, heel to toe, pause and press. Many assume another hiker has joined the path, someone walking at the same speed. Courtesy suggests stepping aside to let them pass. When hikers turn around, the trail stretches behind them. The trail stretches behind them. Longer than memory allows. The curve that should be nearby sits farther away. The forest seems to have unfolded additional distance in silence. No figure stands there. No movement disturbs the fog. Only the trail, extending backward, patient and unchanged. Those who continue forward report a growing awareness of alignment. Every breath seems matched by the forest. Every footfall answered by one that follows. The sound remains close, never gaining, never falling behind. The sensation does not feel hostile. It feels observant, attentive, as if the land itself has chosen to walk along. Grey Hollow sits in a basin shaped by ancient runoff. Mist gathers easily, fed by cool air trapped beneath the tree canopy. The soil remains soft year-round, preserving impressions longer than expected. Tracks linger, overlapping and blurring together. Rangers who survey the path find footprints without clear origin, ending without explanation or beginning. Maps of the area show no unusual length to the trail. Distances remain consistent on paper. Yet time behaves differently here. A short walk stretches into an hour. A planned loop refuses to close. Watches tick normally, but the body senses delay. Muscles tire earlier. Thoughts drift. Focus narrows to the act of moving forward. The fog thickens near the center of the hollow. Vision drops to a few yards ahead. Peripheral shapes suggest motion that never resolves. Leaves rustle without wind. Branches creak as though adjusted by unseen weight. The forest does not feel empty. It feels occupied. Long before official records, this hollow served as a natural passage. Game trails crossed here. Water pooled here. People passed through without settling. Stories carried by early travelers described the land as a place of accompaniment, where no one walked alone, even when alone. These accounts faded into local lore, dismissed as imagination shaped by mist and fatigue. Modern hikers arrive with equipment and expectation. Cameras and trackers, phones and maps. The trail ignores these assurances. Signals weaken. Devices struggle to orient. Batteries drain faster than normal. Some hikers describe the strange impression that the forest listens. Responding subtly to attention. Growing quieter when observed. Loud when ignored. The footsteps behind remain constant. Not heavier, not lighter. They do not crunch or slide. They land with careful precision. Those who stop moving report that the sound stops as well. When walking resumes, the steps return. Perfectly aligned, as though the pause had been anticipated. Turning around again brings the same result. The trail behind lengthens. The fog deepens. And perspective bends. The sense of direction blurs. Replaced by a steady forward pull. That feels both gentle and insistent. Some hikers describe a moment of clarity near the far end of Gray Hollow. The fog thins without warning. Light returns in a pale wash. Sound opens up. Birds call again. The footsteps fade, not abruptly, but as if stepping away onto another path. Relief follows, mixed with an unspoken reluctance, as though something meaningful has been left behind. Those who exit the hollow often hesitate before speaking of it. The experience resists description. Words feel inadequate. The memory settles like fog itself, soft around the edges, difficult to hold. Maps remain unchanged. Photos show nothing unusual. Yet the body remembers walking with another presence that never appeared. Gray Hollow Trail continues to welcome visitors. Signs remain clear. Maintenance crews report no damage. Nature appears balanced and calm. Still, the fog returns each morning, pooling patiently in the low ground. The forest waits. Anyone who walks there long enough may hear the steps begin, matching pace, matching breath. And when the trail stretches behind, longer than it should be, the forest offers no explanation. Only the quiet assurance that in Gray Hollow, the road known as Morning Pines route stretches through a dense northern forest where the trees grow tall and narrow, their needles forming a ceiling that dims the daylight even at noon. It is not marked on most tourist maps, yet locals know it well. The air feels heavier along this road, as if sound itself struggles to move freely. Wind slides through the pine branches with a low, wavering tone that many describe as crying, though no source can ever be found. Drivers often report an uneasy sensation the moment they turn onto the route. Radios lose signal. Phone screens dim or shut off entirely. Even conversations seem to fade, replaced by the rhythmic whisper of needles brushing together. The forest does not feel empty. It feels watchful. The history of Morning Pines route is quietly avoided in nearby towns. Old logging records show that a temporary camp once operated deep along the road several decades ago. Workers were brought in to harvest timber during a harsh winter season. Supplies ran low, weather turned violent, and communication with the outside world failed. When spring arrived and relief crews finally reached the camp, it was abandoned. Tents were still standing. Tools were left where they had fallen. No sign of the workers was ever officially documented. Since then, the road has drawn hikers and campers seeking isolation. Many arrive with confidence. And leave with stories they struggle to explain. Campers describe nights where sleep becomes impossible, not from noise, but from the feeling of being observed. Some wake suddenly to see shapes standing just beyond the glow of their lanterns. Tall, motionless silhouettes linger between the trees, fading slowly as mist rolls through the camp. These figures are never seen approaching. They do not make sound. They simply appear, as if they were always there and only now becoming visible. Witnesses often report the same detail. The silhouettes seem incomplete, edges blurring into the fog, faces undefined, yet unmistakably human in form. One experienced camper described waking before dawn, drawn from sleep by the wind. The sound moving through the pines rose and fell like distant mourning. As his eyes adjusted, he noticed darker shapes against the trees. They stood at equal distances from his tent, forming a wide circle. When he reached for his flashlight, the beam passed through them, illuminating only drifting mist. By sunrise, his campsite felt untouched, yet the ground around his tent showed faint impressions, as if something had stood there for hours. Hikers traveling the route during daylight encounter their own disturbances. Footsteps echo behind them, matching their pace, stopping when they stop. Turning around reveals nothing but endless trees. Compasses spin unpredictably. Trails appear where none existed before, then vanish on the return trip. Some hikers report seeing figures far ahead on the road, only to find the path empty moments later. Forest rangers have received enough reports to quietly discourage overnight camping, though no official warnings are posted. Patrols avoid the deepest stretch of the route after sunset. Vehicles parked along the roadside overnight are sometimes found in the morning coated with a fine layer of pine needles, as if time had passed differently around them. One recurring account involves a low fog that forms without warning. It moves unnaturally, flowing against the wind, wrapping around ankles and climbing upward. Within it, voices seem to carry, not as words, but as emotion. A heavy sadness presses down, often accompanied by sudden memories that do not belong to the listener. Faces of strangers. The ache of hunger. The exhaustion of endless cold. The sensation is not fear, but familiarity, as though the route is guiding them somewhere they have already been. Those who stay too long describe a strange pull, an urge to follow the road deeper into the forest. Those who stay too long describe a strange pull, an urge to follow the road deeper into the forest. Those who stay too long describe a strange pull, an urge to follow the road deeper into the forest. Those who stay too long describe a strange pull, an urge to follow the road deeper into the forest. The trees stand healthy and strong. In daylight, the road appears peaceful, almost welcoming. This contrast is what unsettles visitors the most. The forest does not threaten. It mourns. Some researchers believe the phenomenon is tied to memory rather than spirits. They suggest the land itself has absorbed the emotional weight of suffering, replaying it through sound, shadow, and sensation. Others insist the silhouettes are the remnants of those who never left, bound to the place where their voices were lost. As night falls along Morning Pine's route, the wind rises again. The pines sway gently, releasing their familiar sound into the darkness. To those passing through, it may seem like nothing more than nature at work. To those who listen closely, it feels like a vigil that never ended. The road remains open, unguarded, and quiet. No signs mark its boundaries. No barriers prevent entry. Yet those who have stood among the pines at night understand why locals never linger. Morning Pine's route does not seek attention. It waits patiently, wrapped in fog and memory, whispering its sorrow to anyone willing to hear. The Devil's Drift Trail begins like any other mountain path, narrow and well-worn, climbing steadily through pine and stone. Yet from the first steps, something feels misaligned. The fog behaves in ways that defy expectation. It rolls uphill, slides sideways, and curls back on itself, ignoring the wind as if following rules of its own. Hikers often stop early, unsettled by a strange sensation in their ears. It feels like rapid descent, the kind experienced during a steep drop, even though the ground remains still beneath their boots. Swallowing does nothing. Breathing slowly does nothing. The pressure lingers, rising and falling without rhythm, as if the trail itself is changing elevation invisibly. The fog thickens as the path climbs. Visibility shrinks to a few steps ahead, and sound becomes unreliable. Footsteps seem delayed, echoing behind rather than beneath. Voices from fellow hikers drift strangely, arriving from directions that do not match where people stand. Many report a low hum in the distance, too soft to identify, yet constant enough to be noticed once heard. Maps show the Devil's Drift Trail as a simple ascent with clear switchbacks and stable ground. Trail markers are placed regularly, painted bright against the rock. Yet hikers often miss them, even when passing within arm's reach. Later, they insist the markers were not there at the time, only to see them clearly on the return trip. As elevation increases, the pressure sensation intensifies. Some describe it as being pulled downward while standing upright. Others feel as if the ground beneath them is slowly sinking. Balance becomes uncertain, not from loose terrain, but from a subtle distortion in perception. Steps feel longer or shorter than expected. Slopes appear steeper, then flatten suddenly without warning. The fog here does not simply obscure. It seems to shape the experience of space. Trees appear stretched, their trunks bending slightly as if viewed through moving water. Rocks loom closer than they should, then recede when approached. Time becomes difficult to judge. Minutes feel extended, while hours pass unnoticed. Search and rescue teams have documented multiple incidents where hikers believed they were descending when they were in fact climbing higher. In several cases, individuals turned back early, convinced they had already reached the summit, only to find themselves deeper in the trail system than before. GPS devices sometimes show sudden drops in elevation that do not exist on the terrain. Local explanations vary. Some suggest unusual atmospheric conditions, trapped air layers interacting with the slope. Others point to mineral deposits beneath the trail that may interfere with navigation equipment and human senses. Yet these explanations fail to account for the consistency of reports across seasons, weather patterns, and experience levels. At certain points along the trail, the pressure abruptly releases. The relief is immediate and disorienting, like surfacing from deep water. Ears clear, breath steadies, and the fog thins just enough to reveal distant ridgelines. These moments rarely last. Within minutes, the sensation returns, often stronger, as if reacting to awareness. Veteran hikers warn against stopping for too long. The body struggles to reconcile motionless feet. Some report nausea, others sudden fatigue. A few have described the unsettling feeling that the trail is moving around them. There are places where the fog pools thickest, gathered in shallow depressions along the path. Entering these zones feels like stepping into another layer of the mountain. Sound dulls, pressure spikes, and orientation becomes nearly impossible. Most hikers pass through quickly, driven by instinct rather than reason. Those who linger sometimes experience a powerful urge to sit or lie down, as if rest is urgently needed. Rangers caution against this, noting that several hikers who stopped in these areas later struggled to regain balance or direction. The trail does not appear dangerous in a physical sense, yet it exerts a quiet influence that wears down focus and confidence. As the summit approaches, the fog often lifts without warning. The sudden clarity reveals nothing unusual. The mountain looks ordinary, the sky wide and calm. Looking back, the trail below appears gentle, almost inviting. It becomes difficult to explain the sensations experienced moments before. On the descent, many notice the pressure does not fully fade until they leave the trail entirely. Even then, it lingers faintly, like a memory the body has not released. Some hikers report the feeling returning days later during sleep, accompanied by dreams of falling while standing still. Despite its reputation, Devila's Drift Trail remains open. There are no signs warning of unusual sensations. Only standard notices about weather and terrain. Officials acknowledge the reports but offer no definitive cause. The mountain, they say, has always behaved this way. Those who walk the trail often agree on one thing. The fog is not merely weather. It feels purposeful, drifting where it chooses, shaping how the trail is perceived rather than how it truly exists. And long after leaving the mountain behind, hikers find themselves thinking about that impossible pressure, and wondering how something so intangible could feel so real. Echo Ridge Path begins where the land rises sharply and the forest thins just enough to let sound travel farther than it should. The trail curves along a rocky slope, bordered by low pines and weathered stone, with open air stretching beyond the ridge. Yet the moment someone steps onto the path, the atmosphere subtly shifts. Footsteps do not fade as expected. They linger, bouncing softly between rock faces and tree trunks. A cough echoes twice, sometimes 3 times, each repetition slightly altered. The air seems to hold on to noise, reshaping it before letting it go. The ridge has long been known to locals as a place where voices return changed. Early hikers noted that casual remarks came back whispered, stretched thin, or delayed until the speaker had already moved on. At first, it feels like a natural acoustic effect, a quirk of terrain and stone. But the longer one walks, the harder it becomes to explain. It feels like a natural acoustic effect, a quirk of terrain and stone. But the longer one walks, the harder it becomes to explain. The ridge has long been known to locals as a place where voices return changed. The path climbs steadily, offering wide views of the valley below. Wind passes freely, carrying scents of pine and dust. Despite the openness, many visitors report a sense of enclosure, as though the ridge is narrower than it appears. Sound seems to trace the trail itself, following each bend with careful attention. Those who speak aloud often regret it. A simple sentence may return fragmented, each word arriving separately, softened and distorted. Sometimes the echo sounds closer than the original voice. Sometimes it drifts from behind, even when the speaker faces forward. There are reports of echoes that repeat hours later, long after the moment has passed, surfacing without warning in the quiet. Rangers monitoring the area have tested recording equipment along Echo Ridge Path. Audio captured on the trail frequently contains anomalies. Delayed responses. Overlapping echoes where none should exist. Whispers too faint to identify, yet clearly structured like speech. Equipment functions normally elsewhere, but behaves unpredictably on the ridge. Despite this, the path remains open. Historical records suggest the ridge was once used as a natural signal point. Long before modern trails, people traveled this high ground to communicate across distance, using calls that carried far through the open air. Some believe the land remembers these exchanges, preserving fragments of sound the way stone preserves heat. Others disagree, pointing to the precise nature of the echoes. They do not repeat randomly. They mimic tone and rhythm. A laugh may return hollow and distant, stripped of warmth. A whispered comment may come back louder than expected, as if the ridge amplifies intention rather than volume. Most unsettling are the echoes that do not belong to the present moment. Hikers describe hearing their own words spoken back in unfamiliar voices. Slower. Lower. Sometimes layered, as though more than one presence repeats the sound. These echoes rarely match the timing of natural acoustics. They arrive too late, or too early, interrupting silence rather than responding to sound. Silence itself feels unstable along the ridge. When no one speaks, the environment seems to prepare for sound, holding tension in the air. Small noises become exaggerated. A shifting boot sounds like movement nearby. A breath feels audible. Even thoughts seem louder, as though the mind expects them to echo outward. Some visitors attempt to test the phenomenon, calling out names or phrases and waiting for a response. What returns is rarely satisfying. Words blur. Syllables stretch and bend. Meaning dissolves into rhythm and tone. The ridge does not answer questions. It only reflects presence. Those who walk the path at dusk report the most intense experiences. As daylight fades, sound travels farther, cleaner, yet more distorted. In that stillness, echoes gain clarity, and the difference between original voice and returning sound becomes more pronounced. A few hikers have described hearing echoes without speaking at all. Soft murmurs just beyond hearing. These are not loud or threatening, but persistent enough to unsettle even experienced travelers. Despite these reports, no physical danger has ever been confirmed. No disappearances. No injuries tied directly to the ridge. The unease is psychological, rooted in the way sound disrupts expectation. Human voices are deeply personal, tied to identity and control. When they return altered, something fundamental feels challenged. Many visitors leave the ridge with a heightened awareness of silence. Conversations trail off naturally. Words feel heavier. Some choose to finish the walk without speaking, allowing the path to remain quiet. Others find themselves whispering without realizing it, as if trying not to disturb something unseen. The trail eventually descends, sound behavior slowly returning to normal. Echoes fade. Voices behave as expected. The forest closes in again, absorbing noise rather than reflecting it. Looking back, the ridge appears unchanged, calm and unremarkable. Yet those who have walked Echo Ridge Path often remember it vividly. They recall the way their own words felt unfamiliar when they returned. The way sound lingered longer than thought. The sense that the land was listening, not with intent or emotion, but with perfect, unsettling clarity. Echo Ridge Path does not speak on its own. It waits. And when voices pass through, it remembers them, reshapes them, and releases them back into the air, altered just enough to remind every traveler that not all echoes are empty. The canopy above is layered and thick, allowing only narrow bands of pale brightness to slide across the ground. Beneath it, ferns grow dense and tall, their fronds arching inward until the path feels enclosed, almost guided. Moisture clings to every surface, and the air carries a cool, green scent that lingers in the lungs. At the trailhead, everything appears ordinary. Markers are visible. The path is narrow but clear. Birds move in the upper branches, and the forest hums with distant life. Yet with each step forward, the surroundings seem to lean closer. The ferns sway without wind, brushing against calves and knees, their touch light but deliberate. A faint pressure at the hem of a jacket. A gentle tug at a backpack strap. It feels accidental at first, like fabric catching on leaves. Most keep walking, adjusting their pace, assuming the trail will open up ahead. Instead, the ferns grow thicker. Their fronds overlap and bend inward, creating a corridor of green that blocks sight beyond a few feet. The sound of movement becomes muted, absorbed by layers of foliage. Footsteps land softly on soil padded with fallen leaves and damp earth. The world narrows to breath, movement, and touch. Some hikers report the feeling of hands. Not rough or forceful, but cool and insistent. Fingers that curl briefly around fabric, then release. The sensation does not provoke panic at first. It carries a strange calm, as if the forest itself is guiding rather than restraining. Phantom Fern Trail winds through an area known for persistent shade. The soil here is rich, fed by constant decay and slow water flow. Ferns thrive in these conditions, spreading outward and upward, reclaiming space with quiet persistence. Botanists note that several species grow unusually large here, their fronds broader, their reach longer than expected. As hikers move deeper, direction becomes less certain. The path curves subtly, then sharply, then straightens again. Markers appear farther apart. Time stretches. A walk meant to take minutes extends without explanation. Watches function normally, yet the body feels delayed, as if caught in a different rhythm. The tugging sensation returns, more noticeable now. A sleeve pulled gently backward. A pant leg brushed with careful pressure. When hikers stop, the contact fades. When they move forward, it resumes, always encouraging deeper passage, never pushing back toward the entrance. Those who turn around often find the trail behind them altered. Ferns that were parted now lean together. The path appears narrower, less welcoming. Light dims further, filtered through layers of green. The forest seems to hold its breath, waiting. Sound behaves strangely along phantom fern trail. Voices do not carry far. A spoken word feels absorbed, softened before it can travel. The rustle of fronds becomes the dominant noise, a constant whispering motion that follows each step. Occasionally, hikers hear movement beside them, matching pace, hidden just beyond sight. The sensation of hands grows more distinct near the center of the trail. Fingers seem to press briefly, then slide away. Always cool. Always careful. Never grasping for long. Some hikers describe the feeling of being examined, as if the forest is learning their shape, memorizing the way they move. Despite the closeness, fear rarely dominates. Instead, a sense of surrender creeps in. The urge to stop questioning. Thoughts slow. The outside world feels distant, less relevant than the quiet guidance of the trail. The path straightens, and the sound of open forest returns. Birds call again. Wind stirs leaves higher up. Emerging from phantom fern trail often brings a pause. Hikers stop without planning to, turning back to look at the entrance they just passed through. From this side, the trail appears ordinary. Ferns stand still. No movement suggests pursuit or invitation. The experience feels sealed behind them. Attempts to document the trail yield little. Photographs show dense foliage and shadow, nothing more. Video captures only brushing leaves and shifting light. The sensation of touch, the feeling of guidance, refuses to translate into image or sound. Phantom fern trail remains open and maintained. Signs warn only of narrow paths and uneven ground. Visitors continue to walk it, drawn by curiosity or chance. The ferns continue to grow, reaching inward, brushing against passing legs like cold fingers. And for those who feel the gentle tug, urging them deeper into green silence, the memory lingers long after the forest releases its hold. Silent Steps Loop is a narrow trail hidden deep within a protected woodland. Visitors notice the silence first. Birds do not sing here. Insects do not buzz. Even the wind seems cautious, brushing leaves only when necessary. The quiet feels deliberate, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. The trail forms a looping path that should take less than an hour to walk. Yet many hikers report spending an entire afternoon within its boundaries. Time stretches strangely along Silent Steps Loop. Watches lose minutes. Phone clocks fall out of sync. The sun appears to hover in the same position far longer than expected. Casting pale light through tall trees that seem closer together the deeper one walks. Fog is common here, but it does not behave like ordinary mist. It rolls in slowly, hugging the ground before rising to chest height, softening the forest into vague shapes and muted colors. When the fog thickens, sound disappears entirely. Footsteps no longer echo. Breathing feels louder than it should. Many hikers instinctively lower their voices, even when alone. The most unsettling reports involve footprints. Hikers describe seeing clear impressions in the dirt ahead of them, appearing suddenly where the trail was moments before untouched. They do not match the footwear of those following them. Sometimes they are barefoot. Sometimes they fade after only a few steps. These footprints rarely stay on the path. They drift toward the edges of the trail, leading into dense undergrowth, where visibility drops to almost nothing. Those who attempt to follow them often describe a strong hesitation. A sense that stepping off the trail would be crossing an unspoken boundary. Most stop themselves, guided by instinct rather than reason. Rangers responsible for maintaining the area acknowledge the reports but offer no formal explanation. Official records show no known geological hazards, no dangerous wildlife patterns, and no documented incidents. Still, patrols are limited to daylight hours. No ranger is assigned to remain on Silent Steps Loop once the fog settles in. One experienced hiker described entering the loop early in the morning under clear skies. Halfway through, the forest went quiet. No warning, no gradual fade. The sound simply vanished. As fog crept between the trees, he noticed footprints forming ahead of him, one by one, as if pressed into the soil by invisible weight. He followed them for several minutes before realizing his own steps were no longer making impressions behind him. Another account comes from a group of friends who entered together and became separated within minutes. Each reported hearing faint movement nearby, slow and deliberate, always just beyond sight. When they reunited near the trailhead, none could explain how they had lost track of each other so quickly on such a simple path. Their recorded walking data showed looping patterns that did not match the trail layout. Theories surrounding Silent Steps Loop vary widely. Some believe the area amplifies natural sensory deprivation, causing the mind to fill the silence with imagined movement. Others suggest the fog carries electromagnetic properties that interfere with perception and memory. A few locals speak quietly of something older, something that learned to walk the trail long before it was mapped. What makes the phenomenon more unsettling is the absence of fear in many accounts. Hikers often describe feeling calm, even drawn forward, despite the strange conditions. The silence does not feel threatening. It feels observant. As if the forest is listening instead. Occasionally, hikers report hearing footsteps that do not belong to them. The sound is soft, careful, matching their pace exactly. When they stop, the steps stop. When they turn, nothing is there. Cameras and audio devices fail to capture these moments. Recordings return empty, filled only with static or muted background noise. There are stories of people who leave the loop carrying memories that are not their own. Brief flashes of unfamiliar places. The sensation of walking endlessly without destination. The feeling of being followed, not by something hostile, but by something patient. Despite everything, Silent Steps Loop remains open to the public. No warning signs line the trail. No barriers block entry. On clear days, families walk the path without incident, unaware of its reputation. The forest allows this, offering peace when it chooses to. As evening approaches, fog gathers more quickly. Those who know the loop well leave before then, guided by experience rather than rules. The trail returns to its quiet vigil, waiting. Silent Steps Loop does not chase. It does not trap. It does not trap. It simply records every footstep, every pause, every moment of hesitation. And sometimes, when the fog is thick enough, it walks alongside you, leaving only impressions behind. The Vanishing Creek Trail follows a narrow stream that has shaped the land for generations. The water runs clear and shallow, weaving beside the path with a steady, calming sound. Smooth stones line the banks, and fallen leaves drift slowly along the surface. At first glance, the trail feels peaceful, almost comforting, as if designed for quiet reflection. The creek remains visible for the first stretch of the walk. Sunlight filters through the trees and reflects off the water in shifting patterns. The path stays close, sometimes no more than a few steps from the bank. Hikers often pause here, listening to the rhythm of water moving over stone, unaware that this constancy will not last. Fog arrives gradually, often without being noticed at first. The creek begins to lose definition, its edges softening as the mist thickens. Then, without warning, the water seems to end. One moment it flows beside the trail, and the next it fades into white haze, soundless and unseen. The disappearance is not abrupt in a physical sense. There is no sudden drop or visible obstruction. The stream simply vanishes into fog, as if the landscape beyond has been erased. Hikers describe the unsettling feeling of standing beside a creek they can hear but cannot see, or seeing water ahead that dissolves as they approach. It is near these fog-covered stretches that reports of figures begin. At first, they appear as shapes, upright forms standing motionless in the shallow water. They are often mistaken for shadows cast by trees or for fellow hikers pausing to rest. The figures do not move, do not gesture, and do not react to being observed. As the fog shifts, details sometimes emerge. The figures seem human in outline, yet indistinct, as though made from the same mist that surrounds them. They stand facing the trail, silent and still, watching without expression. No sound comes from them, not even the disturbance of water around their legs. Those who see the figures often feel compelled to stop walking. Time stretches in these moments. The forest grows quiet, and even the creek seems to hold its breath. Some hikers report a heavy feeling in their chest, not fear exactly, but a deep awareness of being observed. When attention is broken, perhaps by a step backward or a glance away, the figures are gone. The water appears empty again, flowing as it should. Yet the sense of being watched lingers long after the sight fades. Many choose to leave the trail at this point, unsettled by an encounter they cannot explain. Local guides speak cautiously about the vanishing creek. They note that sightings tend to occur in similar locations, where fog gathers thickest and the creek widens. These areas are marked on maps as ordinary bends in the stream, with nothing to suggest unusual conditions. Still, reports have remained consistent over time. Search teams working near the trail have occasionally mentioned similar sightings, though such details rarely make it into official records. In a few cases, individuals who wandered off the path near the fog-covered creek were found hours later, confused and unable to recall where they had gone. None reported being harmed, only watched. There are stories passed quietly among locals, suggesting the creek reflects more than water. Some believe it mirrors moments from the past, others think it reveals watchers rather than reflections. No explanation has been confirmed, and most prefer to treat the figures as illusions shaped by fog, light, and expectation. Yet even experienced hikers, familiar with visual tricks of the wilderness, admit the sightings feel different. The figures do not flicker or distort like shadows. They hold form with an unnatural stillness, remaining until the fog shifts or the observer looks away. Cameras and phones rarely capture anything beyond empty mist and flowing water. As the trail continues, the creek eventually returns fully to view. The fog thins, and the forest regains its clarity. Birds resume their calls, and the path feels solid underfoot again. For those who witnessed the figures, this return to normalcy feels almost unsettling, as if something important has been deliberately concealed. Near the end of the trail, the creek widens and slows, losing the urgency it had earlier. The fog no longer gathers here, and visibility remains clear. It becomes easy to question what was seen, to doubt memory and perception. Yet many hikers notice they avoid looking too closely at the water. The vanishing creek trail remains open and accessible, recommended for its scenery and gentle terrain. There are no warnings posted about fog or figures, only standard guidance about staying on the path. Officials acknowledge reports but attribute them to natural conditions common in the area. Those who have walked the trail often agree on one quiet detail. The creek feels aware. Not alive in any ordinary sense, but attentive, as though it notices who walks beside it. And when the fog rises, and the water fades from view, it feels less like something disappearing, and more like something choosing not to be seen. Old Surveyor's path begins without ceremony. There is no marker, no clear trailhead, only. Those who find it usually do so by accident, following what feels like a natural route through the trees. The path was once part of an early land survey, cut through dense woodland when boundaries were uncertain and maps were incomplete. Surveyors moved slowly here, measuring land that resisted clear definition. Records show the trail was abandoned before it was ever finished, left to weather and forgetfulness. Over time, the forest reclaimed it, but never entirely erased it. Walking the path feels straightforward at first. The ground slopes gently, the trees spaced just far enough apart to allow easy passage. Sunlight filters down in shifting patterns, and the forest carries familiar sounds. Birds call. Leaves rustle. The air feels still, balanced. Many hikers describe a false sense of confidence in these early moments, as though the path wants to appear ordinary. Then the compass begins to turn. Needles that once pointed steadily start to waver. A slight vibration passes through the instrument, subtle but unmistakable. Bearings refuse to settle. Even digital devices behave erratically, losing direction or recalculating routes that make little sense. Seasoned hikers often stop here, checking equipment, assuming malfunction. But the disturbance persists. Those who continue often notice small inconsistencies. Landmarks seem familiar too quickly. A fallen log lies across the trail in the same position, unchanged, despite the sense of forward movement. Time feels normal, yet distance becomes unreliable. The most common account from old surveyor's path is the return. After hours of walking, adjusting direction, and carefully tracking progress, they find themselves exactly where they began. The same cluster of stones. The same angle of light. Watches show time has passed. Bodies feel the effort. But the path has led nowhere else. Some believe the land itself is misaligned. Geological surveys suggest irregular mineral deposits beneath the forest floor. This explanation satisfies some observers, but it does not account for the consistency of the experience. People following different routes, using different methods, often return to the same point with the same confusion. Others point to human perception. The forest is dense, repeating in texture and form. Without clear markers, the mind may loop unconsciously, guiding the body in wide circles. Yet this theory struggles against the discipline of those affected. Individuals who know how to mark paths and track movement. They too return. The deeper one goes, the quieter the forest becomes. Sounds soften, then thin out. Wind fades. Footsteps lose their echo. It feels as though the trees absorb noise as quickly as it is made. In this quiet, concentration intensifies. Each decision feels heavier. Each turn feels deliberate, even when instinctive. Some hikers report a growing sense of detachment. Thoughts narrow to immediate choices. Left or right. Forward or stop. The larger goal of leaving the forest fades, replaced by the task of moving. There is no panic, only focus, and beneath it, a subtle pressure, as if the path discourages urgency. Many of these markers now lead back toward one another, forming loose loops rather than lines. One former ranger described attempting to map the path over several days. Each time, his drawn route twisted back on itself, creating shapes that did not match the terrain. Distances were inconsistent. Angles refused to align. When overlaid on a broader map, the path appeared to fold inward, as though occupying less space than it should. Despite the confusion, there are no stories of people trapped forever. Eventually, most leave. Some by retracing their steps deliberately. Others by stepping off the path entirely, pushing through dense growth. Until the forest shifts and direction returns. The moment one leaves the trail, orientation often stabilizes. Compasses settle. Sound returns. The sense of compression lifts. Looking back, the path blends seamlessly into the forest. There is no clear line marking where it begins or ends. It exists only while being walked, a corridor defined by intention rather than geography. Those who attempt to photograph it often find images lacking detail, as though the trail resists being captured. Old Surveyor's path remains unused, not because it is dangerous, but because it is unresolved. It does not lead forward. It does not guide outward. It turns inward, again and again. Reflecting effort without reward. Those who have walked it rarely recommend the experience, yet they speak of it with quiet respect. Not as a threat, but as a reminder that not all paths are meant to take us somewhere new. Some are meant only to show us how easily direction can be lost. And how patient the land can be while we try to find it again. At the edge of Hollow Breath Trail, the ground dips gently and the air cools without warning. Fog gathers low, not drifting but rising straight upward, as if pulled from the soil itself. It moves in slow pulses, swelling and thinning in a rhythm that resembles breathing. Even before the first step forward, visitors sense that this place operates on its own quiet rules. The trail winds through a shallow basin surrounded by old trees whose roots twist above the surface like frozen motion. Their bark is darkened by constant moisture, and lichen spreads in pale patterns across their sides. Light filters down in scattered fragments, never fully settling. The fog fills the gaps, smoothing edges and softening distance. Walking begins easily enough. The path is visible, packed earth bordered by stones and low brush. With each step, the fog curls higher around ankles and calves, warm despite the cool air. The fog rises and falls in gentle waves. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm is steady, unhurried, and unsettlingly close. Some visitors unconsciously match their own breathing to it, slowing their pace without realizing why. Sound behaves differently along Hollow Breath Trail. Distant noises fade quickly. A snapped twig seems swallowed before it can echo. Footsteps feel muted, as though the ground absorbs not just impact but intention. The forest is not silent, yet it listens more than it speaks. Reports often mention the first moment of warmth. A brief wash of heat near the side of the face. A soft current of air brushing the ear. It feels personal, directional, as if aimed with care. Most assume it is a shift in temperature, a pocket of rising mist. They keep walking. Then come the whispers. Not loud. Not sudden. They arrive like a thought that does not belong to the thinker. Close to the ear, carried on warm breath, shaped like words but difficult to repeat. A warning. A suggestion to turn back while the path still allows it. Those who stop moving notice the fog pause as well. The breathing rhythm falters, then resumes more slowly. The warmth fades. The forest waits. When movement begins again, the sensation returns, closer this time, more deliberate. Hollow Breath Trail follows a natural depression where underground water channels release heat from deeper layers of earth. Geologists describe it as a place where temperature and pressure create constant vapor. On paper, the phenomenon is ordinary. In experience, it feels intimate, aware, almost responsive. As hikers continue, the whispers grow clearer, though still indistinct. They never shout. They never demand. They suggest. Turn back. Not yet. Leave this place. The tone carries no threat, only urgency, as if time itself is thinning. Some visitors report feeling hands on their shoulders, not gripping but steadying, paired with breath at the ear. Others describe the sensation of someone walking just behind them, close enough to feel warmth but never close enough to see. Turning around reveals only fog and the suggestion of shapes that dissolve upon focus. The trail narrows near its center. Trees lean inward, their branches forming a loose arch overhead. Fog thickens here, rising to chest height, blurring the path ahead. Visibility drops, and the sense of direction weakens. Left and right feel interchangeable. Forward feels heavy. Those who choose to turn back at this point describe an immediate change. The fog recedes slightly. The warmth cools. The whispers soften into nothing. The trail seems shorter on the return, the forest releasing them without resistance. Those who continue forward experience something else. The breathing grows louder, no longer just seen but felt, pulsing through the ground. The warmth intensifies near the ears, accompanied by clearer warnings, still gentle, still urging retreat. The sensation is not frightening in a sudden way. It is deeply unsettling, like being advised by something that knows more than it should. Time stretches. Minutes feel like long pauses between breaths. The body feels both light and heavy, suspended between movement and stillness. Near the far end of Hollow Breath Trail, the fog begins to thin without explanation. The breathing slows. The warmth fades. The whispers stop mid-thought, leaving silence that feels abruptly empty. Light returns in pale sheets, filtering through thinning mist. Emerging from the trail brings an odd sense of loss. The forest opens. Sound returns. The air cools fully. Behind them, the fog continues to rise and fall, steady and patient, as if nothing has happened. Attempts to record the whispers have failed. Audio captures only ambient noise. Video shows fog moving naturally. No heat signatures appear beyond expected ranges. The experience resists documentation, existing only in memory and sensation. Hollow Breath Trail remains accessible, marked, and unremarkable to those who pass through quickly. Yet for those who linger, who listen, who feel the warmth at their ear and the warning carried on borrowed breath, the trail leaves a lasting impression. It is said that the land breathes to protect itself. That the warnings are not meant to frighten, but to preserve balance. Whether true or not, the fog continues to rise like breathing lungs, and the whispers continue to offer their quiet advice to those willing to hear them. Widowmaker Woods route cuts through a stretch of forest that has earned its name through quiet reputation rather than official warning. The trail appears ordinary at first glance. Tall trees line the path, their trunks straight and weathered. Their canopies woven together so tightly that sunlight filters down in thin, shifting lines. The forest feels old, settled, and still. Yet beneath that calm surface lies a sense of unease that most hikers notice before they can explain it. The route has long been associated with sudden falling trees. Not weakened by storms. Not rotted by age. Healthy trunks split or topple without warning, sometimes on days when the air is calm and the ground is dry. Locals insist the forest behaves differently here. Trees do not simply fall. They are pushed. Hikers often describe a feeling that arrives moments before it happens. A wave of dread that moves through the body without a clear cause. Hearts race. Breathing tightens. Some feel an urge to stop walking or to step off the trail instinctively. Then comes the sound. A sharp crack echoing through the woods, followed by the heavy crash of branches and wood striking the forest floor nearby. In many cases, the fallen trees miss hikers by only a few feet. Rangers reviewing reports note that the timing is strangely precise. The sense of fear consistently precedes the fall by seconds, as if the body recognizes danger before the mind does. No clear environmental trigger has been identified to explain this pattern. The forest itself feels tense along Widowmaker Wood's route. Wind moves unpredictably, sometimes rushing through the canopy in sudden bursts, then vanishing entirely. Leaves rustle without breeze. Branches sway when the air is still. The deeper one travels along the trail, the more pronounced these irregularities become. Historical records show that early settlers avoided building near this stretch of forest. Logging attempts were abandoned repeatedly after equipment failures and unexplained accidents. Workers complained of being watched. Horses refused to move forward along certain sections of the route. Tools were found broken or displaced overnight, though no storms or animals were recorded. Modern hikers report similar sensations. Many feel as though the forest is aware of their presence. Not hostile, but reactive. Each footstep seems to draw attention. The silence between falling branches feels heavy, as if the woods are waiting for the next moment to release tension. One experienced trail guide described leading a small group along the route during a routine survey. Halfway through, he felt an overwhelming pressure behind his eyes, paired with the certainty that something was wrong. He halted the group without explanation. Seconds later, a large limb fell directly across the path ahead, striking the ground where they would have been standing. Another account comes from a solo hiker who described hearing slow creaking sounds above him, like wood bending under strain. Looking up revealed no movement. As he resumed walking, dread surged suddenly, so intense that he dropped his pack and ran forward without thinking. Behind him, a full tree collapsed across the trail, splitting apart on impact. Despite these incidents, Widowmaker Wood's route remains open. Warning signs mention falling debris, but they fail to capture the true nature of the danger. Visitors unfamiliar with the area often dismiss local stories as exaggeration. The forest appears healthy. The trees are strong. There is no obvious reason for the fear that settles into the chest. Some researchers suggest subtle geological activity beneath the soil may destabilize root systems, causing sudden collapses. Others point to temperature shifts and internal tree stress. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the timing, the awareness, or the consistent reports of dread preceding the falls. Local belief offers a different perspective. According to long-held stories, the forest does not tolerate lingering. It reacts to intrusion, especially when people move without respect or awareness. A natural force that corrects itself violently when disturbed. As daylight fades, the route becomes more oppressive. Shadows stretch between trunks, and the canopy darkens into a single mass overhead. Sounds travel poorly. Depth perception shifts. Many hikers choose to turn back before sunset, guided by intuition rather than logic. Those who remain too long often describe leaving with a lingering sensation, as though the forest has marked them in some subtle way. Dreams of falling wood. Sudden flinches at sharp sounds. An unexplained gratitude for having escaped harm. Widowmaker Wood's route does not announce itself with threats. It offers no dramatic display. It simply exists, silent and watchful, responding when it chooses. Trees stand tall until they do not. Branches hold firm until they snap. For those who walk the trail, the lesson is rarely spoken aloud. Pay attention to the feeling that arrives without reason. Trust the moment when dread rises uninvited. In Widowmaker Woods, the forest often knows what is about to fall long before you do. The forgotten camp trail winds through a broad stretch of forest where the trees grow tall and evenly spaced, as if planted with intention long ago. The path itself is gentle, worn smooth by decades of quiet use. Leaves cover the ground in soft layers, and the air carries the faint scent of old wood and earth. At first, there is nothing to suggest the trail holds anything unusual. As hikers move deeper, Subtle signs of past activity begin to appear. A circle of stones emerges beside the path. Farther on, a length of weathered timber lies half buried in the soil. Its edges squared by human hands. These remnants suggest campsites once stood here. Places of rest and warmth that have long since been abandoned. Fog often arrives without warning on the forgotten camp trail. It slips between the trees and settles low, blurring the distance and muting sound. When it does, the remnants of old camps seem to multiply. Fire rings appear where none were seen moments before. Cleared patches of ground reveal themselves briefly, then fade back into leaves and shadow. Some hikers report seeing entire camps materialize in the mist. Tents stand upright, their fabric pale and indistinct. Logs are arranged around fire pits. Cooking tools rest neatly in place. These scenes appear complete, yet oddly untouched, as if waiting for someone to return. The moment the fog shifts, they dissolve, leaving no trace behind. The most unsettling experiences involve sound. Laughter drifts through the trees, light and familiar, carried on air that feels too still. Voices overlap in casual conversation, discussing ordinary things, sharing stories, reacting to unseen events. The tone is relaxed, almost joyful, like a group gathered after a long day of travel. These sounds do not echo as normal voices would. They seem close and distant at the same time, wrapping around the listener rather than coming from a single direction. Hikers often stop, convinced they are approaching an active campsite. Some call out, expecting a response. None ever comes. Those who follow the voices usually find nothing. The fog thickens. And the forest grows quiet again. In places where the laughter seemed loudest, there may be no sign of human presence at all. No footprints, no smoke, no warmth lingering in the air. Only trees and leaves and the steady patience of the trail. Those who follow the voices usually find nothing. Park records confirm that organized camps once existed along this route. Many decades ago, the area was popular with long-term hikers and seasonal workers. Camps were built, used, dismantled, and forgotten as routes changed and regulations tightened. Over time, the forest reclaimed the land, erasing most visible evidence. What remains unexplained is why these traces seem to return, and why they do so selectively. Not every visitor experiences them. Some walk the entire trail without incident, noting only the quiet beauty of the woods. Others encounter fleeting signs, a single fire ring or the distant sound of a voice. A few witness entire scenes unfolding around them. Rangers acknowledge receiving reports but caution against drawing conclusions. Fog, they explain, can distort perception. Sound travels unpredictably through dense forest. Memory and expectation can fill in gaps where visibility fails. Yet even they admit that the consistency of the stories is difficult to ignore. In several documented cases, hikers have found items left behind where fog-born camps appeared. A piece of twine, a rusted nail, a fragment of fabric pressed into the soil. These objects show signs of age, yet no matching campsite can be found nearby. How they surface remains a mystery. There are moments on the trail when time feels layered. The forest seems to hold multiple versions of itself, overlapping gently. The present remains solid underfoot. But impressions of the past drift through it like reflections on glass. The laughter heard is never loud enough to demand attention, only clear enough to be noticed. As evening approaches, the fog tends to linger longer. Light fades slowly, and the trail grows quiet. Voices soften, conversations slow, and laughter fades into murmurs. The effect is not threatening, but deeply nostalgic, as if the forest is remembering something it does not wish to lose. Most hikers choose to leave before nightfall. Those who stay describe an overwhelming sense of being a guest in someone else's space. The camps that appear do not invite interaction. They exist independently, playing out fragments of moments that cannot be changed or joined. Near the end of the trail, the forest opens slightly, and the fog usually lifts. Any remaining signs of camps vanish completely. The path looks untouched, as if no one has ever rested beside it. It becomes easy to doubt what was seen or heard, to explain it away as imagination. Yet many hikers report carrying the experience with them long after leaving. They recall specific voices, the rhythm of laughter, the warmth suggested by unseen fires. These memories feel personal, despite having no clear source. The forgotten camp trail continues to be maintained and marked, recommended for its scenery and calm terrain. There are no warnings about voices or vanishing camps, only reminders to respect the land. Still, those who walk it often agree on one quiet truth. The forest remembers its visitors. And sometimes, when fog drifts through just right, it lets those memories surface. Not to frighten, but to linger. Reminding the living that the past never fully leaves the places where people once gathered and felt at home. Mist-bound Loop lies within a low basin where hills fold inward and air settles quietly, as if reluctant to move on. The trail forms a gentle circle, barely noticeable at first, marked only by flattened grass and subtle impressions in the soil. On clear mornings, it looks harmless. Open ground. Soft light. A place meant for unhurried walking. That impression rarely lasts. The impression rarely lasts. Fog arrives here without warning. It does not roll in gradually or announce itself with shifting wind. One moment the air is clear, the next it thickens abruptly, condensing into a pale wall that swallows distance and direction. Visibility collapses to inches. The horizon disappears. Even the ground feels uncertain. Those caught within the fog describe a strange stillness. Sound dulls. Wind vanishes. Moisture hangs heavy, clinging to skin and clothing. Breathing becomes more noticeable, each inhale loud in the quiet. The world contracts until only immediate space exists. The loop earns its name not from its shape alone, but from what happens within it. Walkers often believe they are moving forward, following the curve of the trail. Steps feel steady. Muscles tire as expected. Yet progress becomes difficult to measure. Landmarks vanish into white. Without visual reference, each step feels identical to the last. Time begins to behave oddly. Watches slow or stop entirely. Mechanical hands freeze mid-motion. Digital screens dim or reset. Phones lose signal and struggle to maintain power. Many hikers only notice this after some time has passed, when the absence of ticking becomes impossible to ignore. Despite this, there is rarely panic. Instead, a calm focus settles in. Attention narrows to breathing, footing, balance. Thoughts stretch, drifting slowly, unhurried. Minutes feel long. Hours feel ambiguous. Some report the sensation of walking for an entire afternoon, only to emerge and find barely an hour has passed. Others experience the opposite. They enter the fog briefly, convinced only moments have gone by. Then step out to discover the day has shifted. Light has changed. And shadows have moved. Evening approaches without explanation. Watches remain frozen, offering no guidance. Researchers studying the area suggest environmental factors may play a role. The basin traps moisture. Temperature shifts can produce sudden, dense fog. Magnetic irregularities may affect electronics. These explanations account for some effects, but not all. Attempts to map the trail often result in inconsistent data. Distances vary between recordings. The circumference refuses to settle into a fixed length. Turning feels discouraged. Movement forward feels like the only option, even when direction is uncertain. There are reports of voices, though not spoken words. Footsteps echo faintly where no one stands. Breathing seems to overlap, as if another presence keeps pace just beyond sight. These sounds do not approach or retreat. They remain parallel, constant, until the fog thins and they vanish. The fog is too complete, too close. It denies depth. Even Oni's own hands blur at Arma's length. This isolation heightens awareness of the body. Heartbeat. Balance. The subtle shift of weight with each step. It feels like walking inside a pause. Some hikers attempt to leave the loop by stepping off the trail. This rarely works while the fog remains. The ground beyond the path feels uneven, resistant. Vegetation thickens unexpectedly. After several uncertain steps, most return to the trail, guided by familiarity rather than sight. The loop accepts them back without resistance. Eventually, the fog lifts. It thins as abruptly as it formed, peeling away to reveal the surrounding hills, unchanged and calm. The trail becomes visible again, its curve gentle and unremarkable. Birds return. Wind stirs. The basin breathes outward. Those emerging often feel disoriented, not lost, but displaced. They check watches that no longer move. Reset devices that struggle to reconnect. Conversations feel slow at first, as if speech must readjust to normal pacing. Many sit quietly for a while, grounding themselves in the returned clarity. There are no reports of lasting harm. No one has vanished. No one has aged unexpectedly. The effect ends at the edge of the fog, as though bounded by an invisible line. Yet those who experience mist-bound loop rarely forget it. They remember the way time felt stretched thin, like fabric pulled gently but firmly. The way the world narrowed to breath and step. The way uncertainty did not frighten, but softened. Mist-bound loop remains accessible, unmarked, and seldom traveled. It does not trap. It does not threaten. It simply removes reference, invites patience, and reminds those who enter that time, like fog, is not always as solid as it seems. Black Root Path begins beneath a dense canopy where sunlight struggles to reach the forest floor. The air feels heavy and still, carrying the scent of damp soil and old wood. At first glance, the trail appears worn but manageable, a narrow stretch of earth shaped by time and footsteps. Only after a few steps does its defining feature reveal itself. Roots cross the path in every direction, thick and dark, twisting over the ground like veins beneath skin. Some are smooth from years of exposure, others sharp and ridged, rising unexpectedly from the soil. They form natural steps and obstacles, forcing hikers to watch their footing carefully. The forest seems to demand attention here, allowing no careless movement. The trees that produce these roots stand tall and silent, their trunks wide and weathered. Many lean slightly inward, as if drawn toward the trail itself. Botanists who have surveyed the area note nothing unusual in species or age, yet the growth feels excessive, almost purposeful. Walking along Black Root Path requires a steady pace. Too fast, and balance falters. Too slow, and the stillness becomes noticeable. The roots appear to shift subtly as perspective changes, creating the impression of movement at the edges of vision. Most hikers dismiss this as fatigue or imagination brought on by constant concentration. Then come the trips. A foot catches on a root that seemed flat moments before. A stumble breaks rhythm, followed by a sudden awareness of the ground beneath. Looking back, the route appears ordinary, no higher than others already crossed. Yet the certainty remains that it was not there before, or at least not in that shape. Reports of these incidents are consistent. Hikers describe stepping confidently, only to be stopped by something unexpected. The sensation is not violent. It is abrupt, precise, as if the path itself intervenes to interrupt forward motion. Scrapes are rare. Bruises uncommon. The forest seems careful not to harm, only to halt. As hikers continue, the roots grow denser. They overlap and braid together, forming dark patterns that contrast with the lighter soil. Some roots appear freshly exposed, their surfaces darker, almost black, as if recently uncovered. Others sink back into the earth just as quickly, leaving behind smooth impressions. Sound changes along this section of the trail. The roots absorb noise, muting movement. Wind moves through the canopy above. But little reaches the ground. The result is an enclosed quiet that sharpens awareness of every misstep. Those who pause to rest often feel a subtle pressure beneath their boots. The ground seems firm yet unsettled. Like something adjusting beneath the surface. Standing still too long creates discomfort, an urge to move again. To keep pace with the path before it changes. The phenomenon of appearing roots has drawn attention from park staff and researchers. Surveys conducted in the early morning show a stable layout. Measurements remain consistent. Yet by afternoon, hikers report new obstacles in familiar stretches. When crews return to inspect, the routes appear unchanged, aligned with earlier records. Some believe the illusion is caused by shifting light and shadow. Others suggest swelling soil from moisture alters root exposure throughout the day. These explanations satisfy on paper, but fail to account for the precise timing of the trips, or the shared certainty among those affected. The deeper sections of Black Root Path feel older. Trees grow closer together, their roots thicker, more intertwined. The trail narrows, forcing single-file movement. Here, the roots rise higher, crossing at angles that require careful navigation. Every step becomes a decision. Hikers often report a growing sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by the ground itself. The roots seem attentive, responding to movement with subtle rearrangement. A step avoided one moment becomes unavoidable the next. Balance feels negotiated rather than assumed. Despite this, panic rarely sets in. The experience encourages caution rather than fear. People slow down, adjust posture, remain alert. The path rewards attentiveness, allowing those who move with care to pass without incident. Those who rush find themselves stopped again and again. Near the center of the trail lies a stretch known for repeated stumbles. Multiple routes converge here, forming a tangled network that looks unchanged at first glance. Yet hikers swear the configuration shifts between steps. A route that was parallel becomes diagonal. One that lay flat rises just enough to catch a toe. Those who stop and observe quietly notice something else. When movement ceases, the roots appear still. When walking resumes, the sense of change returns. It is as though the path reacts only to motion, adjusting in response to presence. Toward the far end of Black Root Path, the density begins to lessen. Roots sink back into the soil, and the ground smooths gradually. Light filters through more freely. The forest opens, and sound returns. The final stretch feels almost ordinary, as if the trail has decided its lesson is complete. Emerging from the path brings relief mixed with uncertainty. Looking back, the trail appears unchanged, roots lying quietly across the earth. Photos taken show nothing unusual. The experience exists only in memory and sensation. Those who have walked Black Root Path often find themselves thinking about it long after leaving. The careful steps. The sudden stops. The feeling that the ground itself was participating. The trail does not chase, threaten, or trap. It simply intervenes. Black route path remains open to visitors, marked and maintained like any other. Warnings mention uneven terrain and exposed roots. Nothing more. Yet the roots continue to cross the trail like twisted veins, patient and silent. And for those who walk without watching their steps, the path always seems ready to remind them that the ground beneath is not as fixed as it appears. Pale Lantern Trail winds through a high forest where the trees grow thin and tall, their pale bark reflecting moonlight long after the sun has disappeared. During the day, the trail feels calm and carefully maintained, marked by subtle posts and worn soil that guide hikers forward. Yet as evening approaches, the atmosphere changes. Colors fade more quickly here, and shadows stretch farther than expected, softening the edges of the path until distance becomes difficult to judge. The trail earned its name from a phenomenon that locals discuss quietly and soft glowing lights, pale and steady, are sometimes seen drifting between the trees. They appear most often at dusk or during overcast nights when the forest should be dark. The lights hover at eye level, moving slowly, as if carried by a gentle current only they can feel. At first glance, the lights resemble lanterns held by distant hikers. Their glow is muted and warm, never harsh. They do not flicker like flames or pulse like electronics. They glide, pausing occasionally, then continuing deeper into the woods. Those who notice them for the first time often feel relief, assuming someone else is nearby. This assumption has led many off the marked path. Hikers who follow the lights describe a quiet certainty guiding their steps. The forest feels open and welcoming in that moment. Branches seem to part naturally. The ground slopes gently forward. The trail markers become less frequent, but the glow ahead feels reassuring, always just far enough away to encourage continued movement. Minutes stretch into hours without notice. The forest thickens. Familiar landmarks vanish. When hikers finally realize they have wandered far off the trail, the lights are often gone. In their place remains a dense stand of trees and a silence so complete it feels unnatural. Search and rescue teams have responded to numerous calls from the area. Many involving experienced hikers who insist they never felt lost at the time. Maps show their paths looping and crossing in ways that make little sense. As if they were guided rather than wandering. In several cases, hikers were found standing still, disoriented, unable to explain how they arrived so far from the trail. One account describes a solo backpacker who noticed a single pale light drifting parallel to the path. It stayed at a respectful distance, never crossing directly in front of him. When he sped up, it did the same. When he slowed, it hovered patiently. Eventually, curiosity overcame caution. He stepped off the trail, expecting to rejoin it within moments. Instead, the ground dipped sharply, and the forest closed around him. By the time he turned back, the trail had vanished completely. Another group reported seeing multiple lights moving together, weaving between trees in gentle arcs. The glow illuminated patches of bark and leaves but cast no shadows. As the group followed, the lights gradually spread apart, drawing each person in a slightly different direction. Only when one hiker stopped abruptly did the others realize they were no longer walking together. There are no confirmed injuries linked directly to the lights. But many who encounter them describe lingering effects. A sense of restlessness. Difficulty sleeping. An urge to return to the trail, even when logic warns against it. Some say they still see faint glows in their peripheral vision months later. Especially in darkened rooms or during foggy evenings. Scientific explanations have been proposed. Bioluminescent fungi. Atmospheric reflections. Optical illusions caused by fatigue and low light. Yet these theories fail to explain the movement patterns, the consistent height, and the way the lights seem to respond to attention. They are not random. They react. According to long-standing belief, the forest uses the lights to guide lost energy away from the main path. Not to harm, but to separate. The lights are not traps. They are invitations, gentle and persistent, offering direction without destination. What unsettles researchers most is the absence of fear during these encounters. Those who follow the lights rarely report panic until after they realize they are lost. During the experience, they feel calm, focused, even grateful. The forest feels less threatening than usual, as if danger has been temporarily suspended. As night deepens along Pale Lantern Trail, the woods take on a reflective quality. Moisture gathers on leaves and bark, amplifying any glow that appears. The lights seem brighter against the dark, more defined. Cameras have failed to capture clear images of the phenomenon. Photos often show faint blurs or empty darkness where witnesses insist the lights were visible. Video footage glitches or loses clarity at the crucial moments. Audio recordings remain silent, unaffected by the presence of the glow. Despite the stories, the trail remains popular. Daytime hikers experience nothing unusual. Families walk the path without incident, unaware of what may appear after sunset. The forest allows this balance, offering peace by day and mystery by night. Those who know Pale Lantern Trail well understand an unspoken rule. When a light appears, do not follow. Stay grounded. Trust the path beneath your feet rather than the glow ahead. The lights will drift on their own, weaving between trees, patient and quiet. They do not chase. They do not call out. They simply move forward, waiting to see who chooses to step off the trail and follow them into the deeper forest, where direction fades and only the glow remains. The crooked compass way begins with reassurance. The trailhead is clearly marked, the map straightforward, the forest welcoming in its quiet order. Trees line the path in steady rows, and the ground slopes gently, offering no immediate challenge. Many hikers step forward with confidence, trusting the familiar tools clipped to their packs and the signs posted at regular intervals. Within the first mile, small inconsistencies appear. A compass needle hesitates before settling. A GPS display refreshes more slowly than expected. These moments are brief and easily dismissed. Blamed on interference or low signal. The trail itself looks unchanged, curving naturally with the land, guiding walkers deeper beneath the canopy. As distance increases, the bends become more subtle. The path does not turn sharply or split clearly. Instead, it tilts slightly downhill where the map suggests a climb. These changes are gentle enough to escape notice, yet persistent enough to matter over time. Hikers often believe they are making steady progress toward the exit. The forest, however, begins to feel repetitive. Landmarks seem familiar, even when they should not be. A fallen tree appears twice. A cluster of stones looks unchanged after an hour of walking. The sense of forward motion remains, but the environment quietly resists it. Navigation devices fail gradually. Compasses spin, then freeze. GPS units show paths looping in impossible ways. Batteries drain faster than expected, even when devices are barely used. Some hikers report screens going dark only to reactivate later with incorrect coordinates. Paper maps offer little help, as the terrain no longer matches what is drawn. The forest itself feels attentive. Branches arch slightly closer over the path. The light dims, filtered through thicker leaves. Sound behaves oddly, footsteps softened while distant noises seem too near. The trail continues to bend, always just enough to avoid clear orientation. Search and rescue teams have documented this pattern repeatedly. Individuals who believed they were heading out were found hours later miles deeper in the forest. Their tracks showed no panic, no erratic movement. They walked calmly, steadily, following the trail exactly as it appeared before them. It is only when exhaustion sets in that concern returns, often too late to easily retrace steps. Attempts to turn around do not always help. The trail behind looks unfamiliar, as if altered by the act of looking away. Markers that were passed earlier are missing or placed differently. The forest offers no clear point of reference, only variations of the same scene repeating with slight changes. Some hikers describe the unsettling realization that the trail never truly points outward. No matter which direction they choose, the ground seems to slope gently inward, drawing them deeper. The bends feel intentional, like a hand guiding rather than blocking. There are no dead ends, only continuations. Local rangers explain the phenomenon cautiously. They cite natural magnetic irregularities, dense canopy interference, and human error compounded by fatigue. These explanations address parts of the experience, but not all of it. They do not explain why so many describe the same calm certainty while being led astray. There are places along Crooked Compass Way where the effect intensifies. Clearings that appear welcoming offer brief relief, only to funnel the trail back into denser woods. Streams cross the path at odd angles, reflecting light in ways that confuse depth and distance. Even the sky seems partially obscured, offering little guidance. Those who stop moving often regain clarity. Sitting down, resting, and waiting allows the forest to settle. Devices sometimes resume normal function. The sense of certainty fades, replaced by unease. It is during these pauses that hikers most often realize how far they have gone. The realization of distance comes slowly, like waking from a focused dream. Rescue reports note that individuals found deeper in the forest frequently express surprise rather than fear. They insist they were almost out, just minutes away from the trailhead. The realization of distance comes slowly, like waking from a focused dream. The trail has claimed no permanent disappearances in recent records, yet its reputation persists. Visitors share stories of walking far longer than planned, of trusting instruments that quietly betrayed them. Many leave with a renewed respect for simple navigation and an unease they cannot fully explain. As daylight fades, Crooked Compass Way becomes more persuasive. Shadows stretch across the path, softening edges. The bends feel smoother, more natural. The forest seems to close ranks behind each passing step, discouraging return without ever blocking it. Eventually, most hikers do find their way out, often by accident rather than intention. A sudden clearing, a familiar marker, a break in the trees reveals a road or trail they recognize. The transition feels abrupt, as if stepping out of a current that had been carrying them along. Looking back, the forest appears ordinary again. The path visible from the edge looks straight enough, harmless in its quiet curve. Devices work normally. Compasses settle without hesitation. It becomes tempting to doubt the experience, to dismiss it as fatigue or coincidence. Yet those who walked Crooked Compass Way remember the feeling clearly. The sense of being guided without being forced. The quiet confidence that replaced caution. The subtle bends that changed everything without announcing themselves. The forest does not advertise its influence. It simply waits, patient and precise, ready to guide those who trust direction too easily, deeper into its careful design. Breathless hollow path cuts through a shallow valley where the land dips gently and the forest grows dense and close. Tall trees lean inward, their branches overlapping high above, creating a ceiling that traps moisture and shadow. Even on warm days, the air here feels cool and weighted, as if it has settled and chosen not to rise again. The path itself is narrow, softened by moss and damp soil. Footsteps sink slightly with each step, releasing the earthy scent of wet leaves and decaying wood. The ground never fully dries. Water beads on stones. Bark darkens with constant moisture. From the first few moments, it becomes clear that this place holds on to what enters it. Fog is a frequent visitor in the hollow. It gathers low, drifting slowly between trunks and across the trail. Unlike higher ground where mist moves freely, the fog here feels contained. Lingers at chest height, dense and cool, brushing against skin and clothing. Breathing it in feels different, heavier, as though each breath must work harder to move through the air. Most hikers notice the sensation gradually. At first, it is only an awareness of breathing, a subtle effort that feels out of place during an easy walk. Then comes a tightening in the chest, not painful, but insistent. Inhalations feel shallow. Exhalations feel incomplete. The fog does not choke or burn. It presses inward gently, persistently, like a weight resting against the lungs. Despite this, panic is rare. Those affected often describe a strange calm accompanying the sensation. The body slows naturally. Steps shorten. Movements become deliberate. There is an instinct to conserve energy, to match breath with motion. The hollow seems to encourage this rhythm, guiding visitors into a quieter pace. Local guides have long advised caution on the path, especially during foggy conditions. Not because of physical obstacles, but because of the environment itself. The hollow sits in a low pocket where air circulation is poor. Moisture accumulates. Temperature remains stable and cool. Some scientists suggest oxygen levels may fluctuate slightly, enough to be noticed by sensitive individuals. Yet this explanation does not satisfy everyone. The shortness of breath does not affect all hikers equally. Two people walking side by side may experience the hollow differently. One breathes normally. The other struggles lightly, aware of each inhale. The effect can begin suddenly and fade just as quickly, without any clear change in conditions. Sound behaves strangely along the path. Voices seem muted, as if absorbed by the damp air. Even loud speech carries only a short distance before fading. The forest feels insulated, wrapped in layers of moisture and foliage. This quiet amplifies internal sensations. Heartbeats feel louder. Breathing feels closer, more present. Some hikers report the sensation of the fog pushing back when they inhale, a soft resistance that disappears the moment they step into clearer air. It is not aggressive. It does not overwhelm. It simply reminds the body that the space here is different. The path winds slowly through the hollow, never steep, never direct. It curves around clusters of trees and shallow pools where water reflects dim light. Ferns thrive in abundance. Moss covers nearly every surface. Life here grows thick and close, nourished by constant dampness. There are moments when the fog deepens unexpectedly. Visibility shortens. The air cools further. In these moments, the sensation of breathlessness often intensifies. Some hikers stop walking altogether, standing still until the feeling eases. Others instinctively place a hand on their chest, grounding themselves in the physicality of the moment. Those who turn back often notice relief almost immediately. A few steps uphill, away from the lowest part of the hollow, and the air begins to feel lighter. Breathing deepens. The chest loosens. The fog thins. The contrast is striking enough to leave a lasting impression. Historical accounts suggest the hollow was once avoided during certain seasons. Early travelers noted the heavy air and lingering mist, choosing higher routes when possible. The path remained, used sparingly, respected rather than challenged. No permanent harm has ever been documented. The sensation passes once hikers leave the area. Lungs return to normal. Energy returns. The experience lingers only in memory, described later with a mix of curiosity and unease. It is not fear that dominates those recollections, but awareness. Awareness of breath. Awareness of environment. Awareness of how closely the body responds to subtle changes in the world around it. Many who revisit Breathless Hollow Path do so intentionally, prepared for the sensation. They move slowly. They pause often. They treat the walk as an exercise in attention rather than endurance. In doing so, some report the experience feels less intrusive, almost meditative. The hollow does not demand retreat. It does not force collapse or panic. It simply asks for acknowledgement. As the path rises gently out of the valley, the forest opens. Air moves more freely. The forest opens. Air moves more freely. Fog loosens its hold. The weight lifts. Breathing returns to an effortless rhythm. Looking back, the hollow appears unchanged, quiet and still, holding its damp air close. Breathless Hollow Path remains a place of subtle influence rather than danger. A reminder that the land shapes not only where we walk, but how we breathe while we do. And sometimes, the most powerful sensations are not those that strike suddenly, but those that press inward softly, asking us to slow down and listen to the simplest act that keeps us moving forward. Shadow Crossing Trail runs through a stretch of forest where light behaves unpredictably. Tall trees rise close together, their branches interlacing overhead and breaking sunlight into drifting fragments. Bright patches slide across the ground, then vanish as clouds pass or leaves sway. The path itself is narrow, pressed flat by years of careful footsteps, and bordered by undergrowth that rarely stirs. At first, the trail feels calm and unremarkable. Insects move unseen. A breeze shifts the canopy above without touching the ground. Visibility extends far enough to feel reassuring, yet never far enough to feel open. The first sightings usually happen without warning. A figure crosses the trail in the distance, moving from one side to the other. It appears briefly, no more than a silhouette shaped by shadow and contrast. By the time the eye focuses, it is already gone, dissolved into the trees. Most hikers assume another person is nearby. The trail is known, accessible, and well marked. Calling out feels unnecessary. The figure seemed close enough to hear, yet no sound follows. No footsteps. No rustling leaves. The forest remains still. Always ahead. Always just far enough away to resist detail. The explanation is practical, though it does little to settle those who have seen the crossings repeatedly. The figures never acknowledge observers. They do not turn their heads. They simply cross and vanish. Attempts to approach the crossing point reveal nothing unusual. The ground remains undisturbed. No tracks appear. The undergrowth stands untouched. Sound behaves strangely along this trail. Footsteps carry forward but seem to fade behind. A snapped twig sounds distant, even when close. Voices feel absorbed by the trees, losing shape and direction. The absence of sound during the crossings becomes more noticeable with each repetition. As hikers progress, anticipation builds. Eyes scan ahead, watching the edges of the path rather than the ground. Each bend promises another glimpse. When it comes, the moment feels both expected and unsettling. The figures appear consistent in shape but never identical. Some seem broader. Others thinner. All remain undefined. Distance plays a role. No matter how quickly one walks, the crossings remain just out of reach. The trail never closes the gap. The forest seems to lengthen subtly, adding space without notice. Time stretches. Minutes feel elongated, measured not by movement but by waiting. Those who stop walking notice that the crossings stop as well. Standing still brings quiet. The forest holds its position. Light fades gradually deeper into the trail. Shadows grow longer and more numerous. Distinguishing between shape and absence becomes harder. The figures blend more easily into the environment, requiring sharper attention to notice at all. Some hikers realize they are no longer sure how many crossings they have seen. Despite the tension, fear rarely overwhelms. The figures do not approach. They do not block the path. They do not follow. Their behavior feels neutral, observational rather than threatening. Still, the lack of sound, the refusal to clarify, creates a steady unease that presses gently against the mind. Historical records of the area are sparse. The trail follows an old passage once used for travel between settlements that no longer exist. Maps show the route clearly, yet notes from early surveys mention frequent visual confusion caused by shifting light and dense growth. No mention is made of figures, only of difficulty judging distance. Modern equipment offers little clarity. Cameras often fail to capture the crossings. When they do, the images show only blurred shadows or empty space. Motion sensors trigger without visible cause. Audio recordings reveal silence where sound should be. As the trail approaches its far end, the crossings become less frequent. Light increases slightly. The forest opens, allowing longer views between trees. The figures appear one final time, farther away than before, crossing slowly and disappearing into brighter space. After that, the path remains empty. Emerging from Shadow Crossing Trail brings a subtle sense of release. Sounds return gradually. The forest feels less compressed. Looking back along the path shows nothing unusual. The shadows fall naturally. No movement suggests recent passage. Those who walk the trail often struggle to describe what they saw. Words feel inadequate. The figures resist definition, existing only as impressions shaped by contrast and motion. They are remembered more as events than images. Shadow Crossing Trail remains open and maintained, a quiet path through a quiet forest. Visitors continue to walk it, many without incident. Yet enough people report the same experience to give the trail its reputation. Figures crossing ahead. Always silent. Always distant. Never clear enough to explain themselves. And for those who witness them, the memory lingers, like a shadow seen once and never again, leaving behind the certainty that something crossed their path, even if it never truly arrived. Last Light Forest Road runs through a low valley where the trees lean inward, narrowing the sky into a thin ribbon of pale blue. During the early hours of the day, the road feels ordinary. Gravel crunches beneath tires and boots. The forest appears calm, almost gentle, inviting travelers to continue deeper without concern. Those familiar with the road speak of a moment when the air begins to change. It often starts with fog, light at first, clinging close to the ground. As it gathers, the forest grows quieter. Birds vanish. Insects fall silent. The fog thickens in layers, stacking upon itself until distance becomes difficult to judge. What should be clear afternoon light begins to dim as if the day itself is being shortened. Many who travel Last Light Forest Road describe the same unsettling realization. The darkness arrives too quickly. The sun does not set. It fades, draining color from the world in a matter of minutes. Greens turn gray. Shadows flatten. The forest loses depth, becoming a wall of shapes rather than a living space. Panic often follows. The feeling is sudden and overwhelming, far stronger than ordinary fear. Hearts race without warning. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts scatter. Some feel an urgent need to escape, while others freeze in place, unsure which direction leads back. It is during this surge of panic that the road begins to disappear. Witnesses report watching the path ahead dissolve into fog. The gravel loses contrast, blending seamlessly into the surrounding ground. Edges blur until the road can no longer be distinguished from the forest floor. Trail markers fade from view, swallowed by mist that seems to thicken specifically where guidance should be. Drivers experience similar disturbances. Headlights lose reach, illuminating only a short stretch ahead before dissolving into white haze. The road appears to narrow, then widen unpredictably. In some accounts, the road seems to slope downward where no incline exists. Vehicles slow involuntarily, as if the air itself resists movement. One traveler described entering the forest in late afternoon, expecting a brief drive through the valley. Fog rolled in within minutes. The sky dimmed to the color of early dusk, though his watch showed plenty of daylight remaining. When he stopped the vehicle, the silence pressed in so heavily it felt physical. Only when he closed his eyes and waited did the fog begin to thin. Hikers tell of an even more disorienting experience. On foot, the loss of the trail feels immediate and absolute. The ground beneath becomes uneven, unfamiliar. Steps that should be firm feel uncertain. Many report dropping to their knees, overwhelmed by the sensation that the forest has erased all direction. Those who recover describe focusing on small details, breath, heartbeat, the feel of earth beneath their hands, until the panic passes. Rangers assigned to nearby regions acknowledge unusual conditions along Last Light Forest Road. Weather patterns are unpredictable. Fog forms without clear cause. Light behaves inconsistently beneath the canopy. Official explanations point to valley effects and dense moisture. Yet these fail to address the emotional intensity reported by nearly everyone who experiences the phenomenon. The panic does not feel internal to those affected. It feels imposed. Locals believe the forest reacts to hesitation. The more one resists the environment, the more it closes in. According to long-held stories, the road only remains visible to those who move calmly and without urgency. Fear accelerates the fading light. Panic feeds the fog. Several missing person cases are associated with the area, though none have been conclusively linked to the phenomenon. In many instances, individuals were later found disoriented but unharmed, standing just off the road or trail, unable to explain how they had lost their way so completely. Others were located miles from where they believed themselves to be. One particularly consistent detail appears across many reports. Just before the road disappears entirely, there is a moment of intense clarity. A final glimpse of the path as it should be. Straight. Solid. Defined. Then it is gone, replaced by uniform fog and dimness. Some researchers suggest this moment represents the mind struggling to anchor itself before sensory overload takes over. Others believe the forest itself offers a final warning, a last chance to remain grounded before panic reshapes perception. As night approaches, Last Light Forest Road becomes nearly impassable. Fog reflects what little light remains, creating a false brightness that hides depth and distance. Sounds become muffled. Footsteps seem distant even when close. Many describe the feeling of being suspended in time, neither progressing nor retreating. Those who navigate the road safely often share similar advice. Do not rush. Do not fight the fog. Stop if necessary. Breathe slowly. Keep attention focused on what is immediately present rather than what might happen next. The road, they say, returns when calm returns. By morning, the forest resets. Fog lifts. Light behaves normally. The road reappears unchanged, offering no sign of the confusion it caused hours earlier. To an uninformed traveler, it looks harmless, even beautiful. Last Light Forest Road does not leave physical scars. It leaves memories of vulnerability. Of how quickly certainty can fade when light behaves differently. Of how easily direction can vanish when panic takes hold. The forest does not pursue those who enter. It does not trap them permanently. It simply reveals how fragile perception can be when the last light begins to dim. And the path ahead quietly disappears. Thank you for walking these foggy forest trails with me tonight. These paths may look peaceful by day. But when fog settles in, they become something else entirely. The forests of California hold memories of those who wandered too far, trusted the wrong voice, or ignored the feeling that told them to turn back. If you ever find yourself walking a foggy trail, remember these stories. Stay aware, trust your instincts, and never follow what you cannot see. Would you dare to walk one of these trails alone, or would you choose to leave before the fog closes in? Rest well, my dear friend. Until our next haunted journey.